My fiancée tried to force me to pay for her sister's lavish wedding, claiming I owed her family. I, 32, male, am at my absolute wit's end. I've been with my fiancée, Sarah, 30, female, for 5 years, engaged for 1. We were planning a modest wedding for ourselves next spring, nothing extravagant, just a nice celebration with close family and friends. We both earn decent salaries. I'm a software engineer, and Sarah is a marketing manager. We have a combined income that allows us to live comfortably, save for our future, and still enjoy ourselves. Or so I thought. This entire situation has spiraled so far out of control that I don't even recognize the woman I'm supposed to marry anymore. The trouble started about 6 months ago when Sarah's younger sister, Emily, 28, female, got engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Mark, 29, male. Emily and Mark are, let's just say they have different financial priorities than Sarah and I. They've always lived a bit beyond their means, preferring designer clothes and expensive nights out over saving. Mark works in sales, and Emily is a freelance artist. Their income is erratic, and they've always relied heavily on Sarah's parents for financial support, even well into their late 20s. Sarah's parents are upper middle class, but they're not independently wealthy by any stretch. They've always indulged Emily, though, seeing her as the creative one who needed more support to pursue her dreams. Sarah and I, on the other hand, have always been more self-sufficient, which, in hindsight, I now see has created a weird dynamic within her family. When Emily announced her engagement, it was clear from the outset that she envisioned a fairytale wedding. She started talking about a destination wedding in Italy, a custom-designed gown, a full open bar, a live band, and all the bells and whistles you see in bridal magazines. Sarah and I were happy for her, of course, but I remember a knot forming in my stomach even then. I knew Emily's financial situation, and I couldn't fathom how she planned to pay for any of this. Mark is a nice guy, but is not exactly rolling in money either. He's often complained to me about Emily's spending habits, albeit always with a loving side. A few weeks after the engagement, Sarah started acting strange. She became withdrawn, anxious, and would frequently sigh heavily when Emily's wedding came up in conversation. I tried to ask her what was wrong, but she kept brushing me off, saying it was just wedding stress and sister stuff. I knew it was more than that. Sarah and Emily have always had a close but somewhat competitive relationship. Emily has always been the favored child, the one who could do no wrong in her parents' eyes, despite her often irresponsible financial decisions. Sarah, the more practical and grounded sister, often felt overlooked, though she never explicitly said it. I always tried to validate Sarah and remind her of her own incredible accomplishments and intelligence. One evening, about 4 months ago, Sarah finally broke down. We were having dinner, and she just started crying, saying she felt immense pressure. I held her, comforted her, and urged her to tell me what was really going on. That's when she dropped the bombshell. Emily and Mark had approached Sarah's parents with their lavish wedding plans, complete with detailed quotes from various vendors. The total cost was astronomical, well over $100,000 for the Italian dream wedding. Sarah's parents, as expected, balked. They said they simply couldn't afford it, not without completely draining their retirement savings, which they were unwilling to do. Emily, apparently, threw a massive tantrum, accusing them of not loving her enough and of favoring Sarah because she was easier. This, Sarah explained, opened old wounds. Then came the kicker. Emily, in her fit of rage, had apparently declared that if her parents couldn't pay, then Sarah and I should. My jaw nearly hit the floor. Sarah quickly added that her parents had dismissed the idea, but Emily had continued to press the issue, constantly bringing it up in family discussions, always with Sarah present. Emily's argument was that Sarah and I were doing so well and had so much saved, and it would be so easy for us to help out. She even suggested that since Sarah and I were planning a smaller, more affordable wedding, we could simply postpone ours and use that money for hers. I was furious. Absolutely incandescent. I told Sarah, in no uncertain terms, that this was completely out of the question. Our savings were for our future, a down payment on a house, our own wedding, potential future children, retirement. They were not for Emily's extravagant wedding fantasy. I told Sarah that while I loved her sister, Emily needed a reality check. She needed to understand that she couldn't just expect others to fund her lifestyle. Sarah agreed with me, at least initially. She said she had told Emily the same thing, and that she was tired of Emily's sense of entitlement. For a brief period, I thought the matter was closed. Sarah seemed to push back against Emily more, and conversations about the wedding became less frequent. Then, about 2 months ago, a subtle shift began. Sarah started bringing up Emily's wedding more often, but in a different way. She would talk about how disappointed Emily was, how stressed Mark looked, and how sad her parents were that Emily wouldn't get her dream wedding. It felt like a slow, insidious erosion of her initial agreement with me. One evening, Sarah sat me down, looking very serious. She said she had been thinking a lot about Emily's wedding and our own. She started by saying how much she loved her family and how important it was to her that everyone was happy. I nodded, not knowing where this was going, but feeling a familiar sense of dread. Then she said it. Maybe we could just help them out a little bit. Not the whole thing, of course, but just a substantial contribution. You know, to ease the burden on my parents and make sure Emily gets at least some of what she wants. I stared at her, dumbfounded. Sarah, we already discussed this, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Our money is for our future. We are not responsible for Emily's choices or her wedding budget. But it's my family, she retorted, her voice rising. They would do it for us if the roles were reversed. My parents have given so much to me over the years. This is a chance to show them we appreciate it and to help Emily. She's my sister, and I want her to be happy. Sarah, I countered, your parents have supported Emily far more than they've supported us financially. They paid for her art school, they've covered her rent countless times when she was between gigs, and they even bought her that ridiculously expensive car last year. We've always been independent, and even if they had done it for us, that doesn't mean we are obligated to bankrupt ourselves for Emily's vanity project. What about our happiness? What about our future? The argument escalated. Sarah accused me of being selfish, of not caring about her family, and of being too frugal. I accused her of being manipulated by her sister and of having a completely unrealistic view of our finances. I told her that if she truly believed we should spend tens of thousands of dollars on Emily's wedding, then we had some serious fundamental disagreements about our shared future. The next few weeks were tense. Sarah would bring it up indirectly, making comments like, Emily found the most beautiful wedding venue, if only they could afford it, or it's so sad that Emily won't get to have the wedding she always dreamed of. It felt like a constant psychological assault. I tried to stand my ground, reiterating that my answer was no, and that we needed to focus on our own financial stability. Then, last week, things came to a head in a way I never could have anticipated. Sarah's parents hosted a family dinner. Emily and Mark were there, and the conversation, predictably, revolved around Emily's wedding plans, or rather, the lack thereof. Emily was moping, making dramatic pronouncements about having to settle for a sad, small wedding because no one understood her vision. Mark looked uncomfortable, constantly trying to steer the conversation elsewhere, but Emily wouldn't let it go. One point, Emily sighed dramatically and said, "It's just so frustrating. If only we had some help, just a little boost." She then looked pointedly at Sarah and me. Sarah's mother, bless her heart, tried to diffuse the situation by saying, "Now, Emily, we've discussed this. Everyone has to live within their means." But Sarah's father, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, cleared his throat. He looked at me, then at Sarah, and said, "You know, son, Sarah and I were talking. You two are doing very well. And Emily is your future sister-in-law. It would be a wonderful gesture if you could contribute to her wedding. It would mean the world to her, and to us." I felt a cold dread wash over me. I looked at Sarah, who was avoiding my gaze, staring intently at her plate. This wasn't just Emily being entitled anymore. Her parents were now actively involved in pressuring us. I felt betrayed by Sarah, as if she had discussed this with her parents behind my back and encouraged this line of thinking. "With all due respect, sir," I said, choosing my words carefully, "Sarah and I have our own financial goals and commitments. We are saving for our own wedding and a down payment on a house. We simply can't afford to make a substantial contribution to Emily's wedding, especially one that costs over $100,000. Emily immediately burst into tears, accusing me of being heartless. "You just don't want me to be happy," she wailed. "You have so much money, and you're just hoarding it. It's not fair." Sarah's mother tried to soothe Emily, but then turned to me with a disappointed look. "He's right, honey," she said to Emily, but her eyes were fixed on me. "They do have their own expenses, but perhaps a smaller contribution? Something significant enough to make a difference." It was then that Sarah finally spoke up. She looked at me, her eyes pleading, and said, "Honey, maybe we could just give them a gift? A really generous wedding gift, perhaps covering a significant portion of the catering or something." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was openly siding with her family against me, in front of everyone. The gift she was proposing would still be thousands, if not tens of thousands, of dollars. It was a thinly veiled attempt to get me to cave. "Sarah," I said, my voice tight with anger, "we've been over this. My answer has not changed." The dinner ended shortly after, with a thick, uncomfortable silence hanging in the air. Sarah and I left, and the car ride home was completely silent. As soon as we got through the door, I turned to her. "What was that, Sarah?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "You allowed your family to gang up on me, and then you actively participated. Did you talk to your parents about this beforehand? Did you encourage them to put pressure on me?" Sarah burst into tears again, but these were different tears. These felt manipulative. "I'm just trying to make everyone happy," she cried. "Emily is my sister, and my parents are stressed. I just want peace. Peace at my expense." I shot back. "At the expense of our financial security? At the expense of our future plans? You stood there and let them imply I was selfish for not funding your sister's lavish wedding. And then you suggested we give them a generous gift as if we're made of money." She continued to cry, saying I was being unreasonable, that I didn't understand the family dynamic, that I was just being cold and analytical like a computer. That cut deep. I've always tried to be supportive, loving, and understanding. I've gone out of my way to be kind to her family, even when Emily has been particularly difficult. "Sarah," I said, taking a deep breath, trying to regain some composure. "This isn't about family dynamics anymore. This is about trust, respect, and our shared values. We are supposed to be partners. We agreed on our financial goals. You're now actively undermining those goals and pressuring me to give away a significant portion of our savings for something that has absolutely nothing to do with us, just to appease your sister's unreasonable demands." She finally looked at me, her eyes red and puffy. "But what if we did just help them out? I mean, what's a few $1,000s in the grand scheme of things, if it makes my sister happy?" That was the moment I realized the depth of the problem. It wasn't just a momentary lapse of judgment. It was a fundamental difference in how we viewed money, family obligations, and our future together. A few $1,000s, Sarah? We are talking about potentially tens of thousands. That's a down payment on a house, or a significant chunk of our retirement savings. You truly don't see anything wrong with that? You think that's a reasonable expectation? She didn't answer directly, just mumbled something about family helping family. I shook my head. "Sarah, I love you. I want to marry you. But I cannot marry someone who believes it's acceptable to jeopardize our financial future to fund her sister's extravagant lifestyle, especially when her sister has consistently shown a lack of financial responsibility. I cannot marry someone who allows her family to pressure me like this, and then joins them in doing so." The air in the room became thick with unspoken words. Sarah looked shocked. She hadn't expected me to go there. "Are you saying you're breaking off our engagement?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know," I admitted, feeling a crushing weight in my chest. "I honestly don't know what to say. This entire situation has made me question everything. How can we build a life together if we are not on the same page about such fundamental issues? How can I trust that you'll prioritize our needs over your sister's fleeting desires? We've been living in a Cold War ever since. Sarah is upset, but she hasn't apologized for her behavior, nor has she backed down from the idea of us contributing to Emily's wedding. She keeps saying things like, 'It's just money, and family is more important than anything.' I keep trying to explain that it's not just money. It's about our future, our security, and respecting the boundaries we set for ourselves. It's about Emily's complete lack of accountability and the enablement from her family that I'm so confused and hurt. I love Sarah, or at least the woman I thought she was. But this has exposed a side of her that I find deeply troubling. It's not just the money, it's the lack of loyalty, the willingness to throw me under the bus for her family's unrealistic expectations, and the complete disregard for our shared financial goals. Am I overreacting? Is this a normal family dynamic that I just don't understand? Should I just bite the bullet and give them some money to save the peace, even if it goes against every fiber of my being? Or is this a red flag so massive that I need to seriously reconsider our entire relationship? I feel like I'm losing my mind. I never thought our engagement would be in jeopardy over something like this. I need an outside perspective. I really do. I'm exhausted and I don't know what to do.